Hey guys, what's up? Card here, and today I'm here with a Dimensional Police deck profile. This is a Zeal deck profile. It's a very fun deck, and it's actually pretty good. So, without further ado, let's get into the deck profile. So, for the starting Vanguard, we run the Grade 0 Zeal. It's a ride chain, so you know, we haven't played with ride chains in forever since we don't really get ride chains nowadays. But skill is, when the Grade 1 Zeal rides on top of this card, you can search your deck, top 7 cards of your deck, and search for the Grade 2 Zeal or the Grade 3 Zeal that's part of the ride chain, not the Legion one, and then add it to your hand to and then shuffle your deck. So you can choose one of those. Second skill is, when a not Zeal, not Grade 1 Zeal rides on top of this card, he goes in the back he becomes a Pioneer or Forerunner. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Most of the time, if you don't have the Grade 1 in your starting hand, when you before you mulligan, you're probably gonna just put all your cards back in because you really want to get the ride chain going on. Of course, in the tournament, you probably don't want to do that, but for fun play, I usually just put everything back in. Right. Anyway, next we run 4 of the new era Beast Zeal. He is the new Legion card that came out in the extra booster, and he is pretty good. Skill is Legion. You can Legion, and the second skill is Counterblast 1. When a card is put in your damage zone, while this card's in Legion, you may pay the cost, Counterblast 1. If you do, choose one of your opponent's units, and during this turn, that unit loses 1,000 power for every card in your Vanguard and Rearguard circle. So it's pretty strong. Yeah, it's pretty decent. Second skill is, when this card hits, if your opponent's attack is 8,000 or less, you can soul charge 1 to unflip 1 damage. So there's that. Next, run 4 of the Galactic Beast Zeal, I think his name is. It's the original Zeal, Grade 3 Zeal. Skill is Limb Break 4, Counterblast 2. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, and under the end of turn, it loses 1,000 power for every Rearguard that you have, and this skill cannot be used for the rest of the turn, so you can use it once. And the second skill is, if you have the Grade 2 Zeal in your soul, this card gets plus 1,000 power. So it becomes a 11k Vanguard once you have the Grade 2. Alright. So obviously there's the combo where you use the self-damagers to damage your opponent, and then you pop both his skill and this guy's skill to minus your opponent 12k. Or at least 12k at least. Yeah. So, yeah. Could be 13k, I think, yeah. Alright, next we run the Grade 2 Zeal. He's part of the ride chain. Skill is, if you have the Grade 1 Zeal in your soul, he gets plus 1k, so he becomes a 10k base. Second skill is, if the Grade 3 rides on top of this Zeal rides on top of this card, your opponent loses 3,000 power. So pretty easy power minusing in the early game, which is useful because there's cards that require you to have early game minus. Next, we run 3 of the card that came out in BT, or the extra booster. Skill is Vanguard Rearguard Circle skill. When this card attack hits, you pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your opponent's Vanguards, and it loses 3,000 power. So this card puts pressure on your opponent to prevent their unit from losing more power. Usually I don't actually get a skill off that much, or you don't want to use the skill off that much, because this deck is quite counterblast heavy, and yeah. But it's useful if you don't don't have the thing. For example, if you have 3 cards and you minus your opponent 3,000 already from either your ride or Darwin, and then you attack with hits with this, your opponent loses another 3k, so he loses a 6k, so 11k Vanguards become a 5k Vanguard, and it does help with your last attack. So yeah. Next, we run this card. This card I find especially useful early game. It's the card that came out in BT13. Skill is, when this card attack hits while your opponent's 8,000 power or less, you can, and when this card attack hits, this card gets a new skill, a Vanguard Rearguard Circle. When this card attack hits, you can draw a card. So, very good early game. For example, if you, after the turn you ride grade 1, you minus power, and then you attack with this card, or if your opponent's grade 1, attack with this card and hit, you can just draw a card for free. It's pretty good. Downside to him is he's at 8k, which is kind of a bummer, but for the most part, it's not bad. Next, we run for Evolution Monster Darwin. This card is very, very useful. This card corrects your ride chain, or makes it so that your ride chain is useful. Because a lot of times, after you finish riding Zeal, your opponent loses 3k, for example, if you ride the ride chain. And then you play this card to pump a card back in, and you search for this Zeal, and you can do the Legion while your opponent still loses that 3k. So yeah, basically his skill is choose a rear guard and put it into your soul. When this card places on a rear guard circle, you pay the cost. If you do, search your deck with the same grade, or as Zeal, with the same grade as your Vanguard, and ride that unit as stand. And when you ride that unit, you can choose a unit in your soul that's the same grade as your current Vanguard and call it to a rear guard circle, and then choose your opponent's Vanguard and it loses 3,000 power. I'll explain that in a bit, but basically, you get to ride a unit and then call a unit from your soul that's the same grade. So a lot of times you're just gonna ride New Era Beast Zeal and then call the old Zeal. So yeah. Next we run the grade 1 ride chain of the Zeal. Pretty self-explanatory. If the grade 0 Zeal is in your soul, which it should be, this card gets plus 1k, so it's an 8k base. And second skill is, when the grade 2 Zeal rides on top of this card, your opponent loses 3,000 power, which is where this guy is handy early game. So yeah. Next we run 2 of the self-damagers. Actually, if you don't like running this guy or this guy, you can replace them with the grade 2 damagers. But I actually don't think they're that useful late game. So yeah, the build that runs more of the self-damagers are more burst power based, while my build is more consistency based. So yeah. Skill is, when this card plays on Vanguard Rearguard Circle, you may pay cost 1. If you do, choose put the top card of your deck and put it into your damage zone, and then if you do, at the end of the turn, it goes back to the choose a card in your damage zone and put it in into your deck. So basically, you borrow a damage for that turn. The reason why we don't run the the Limit Break Enabler is because you want to put a damage in your damage zone so that you can activate New Era Beast Zeal skill. So there's that. You could run 3 Darwin and 3 of this instead, but I think Darwin is a more consistent card, since you don't want to be stuck in this Zeal for too long, because he's honestly not that great. But yeah. The next run 4 Perfect Guards. You can run Grand Guards instead. The reason why I'm not running Grand Guards is because my Grand Guards are in my other deck, and I don't want to pull them out, so I'm just going to use these instead. It does make a difference because it does help you inflict damage, but if I'm not playing in a tournament, I'm not going to swap them out. So yeah, just a little heads up there. For triggers, I'm running 8 crit, 4 draw, 4 heal. Pretty self-explanatory. You can run stands. Stands are not bad, but I don't know. I don't really like the stands. They are good, but I don't know. If you don't get your combo off, the stands aren't that great. Of course, if you get them off, they're amazing, but for consistency's sake, I'm just gonna run crits instead. You know, because crits are nice, so you know, why not? So yeah, a lot of times, I'll just show you guys how to put the deck. For example, if you have something like this, so for example, if you just ride grade 3 like this, your opponent loses power, and then you're like, call a draw trigger, and then you go, call Darwin, and then this happens, and then your opponent loses 3,000 power. That's to use this card, and then this way your opponent still lost that 3,000 power, and you still have the better Vanguard, quote unquote better Vanguard. And this card's also useful because a lot of times after you finish legioning, for example, if you're legioned already, you can do it again so that you can just search for another copy of New Era Beast Zeal and Legion again, and then just keep on. It's like putting triggers back in. The main problem with that is that you might not have enough of the old Zeal in your deck. So a lot of times what you might want to do is pull them out and then call on top of it so that you have cards, you have a Zeal to put back in your deck. So yeah, oh, I forgot to show you guys my G zone. So let's get into that. So for the G zone, I run 1 Heat Magnum. Mainly it's because it's for if you misrode your ride chain and you still have the 10k base Zeal. This way he'll still be 26k if you're not planning to use Atmos and Blizza. So Heat Magnum is nice. Run 1 Blizza and 1 Atmos. A lot of times you're not going to use them, but they're there if you need to use them. So yeah. Next I run 2 Dark Superman Omegas. These cards are pretty good, especially if you have extra New Era Beast Zeals in your hand. Call them out, put it in your soul, and your opponent loses 11k. It's quite deadly. His skill is Counter Blast 2, Soul Blast 1. When this card's placed on the Vanguard circle, you'll pay the cost if you do. Choose one of your guards, put it in your soul, and then your opponent's front row loses power equal to that unit's power. So basically, what will happen is most of the time you'll either have this or the New Era Beast Zeal on the field because of if you use Darwin's skill. You're going to have either one of those. So a lot of times you're just going to put it back in and subtract power from your opponent. So yeah. And run 3 X-Tigers. Mainly using him because he's Counter Blast. He's a free Counter Blast free unit. And he does he can be quite useful, I guess. So yeah. Mainly you're gonna use X-Tiger and flip one of these guys up. So yep. You can run the new Clay Element Grade 1 that helps you unflip damage. But I personally don't have enough space because I want to max out on this guy. And you obviously have to max out on this thing. And I kind of want to run some self-damagers, so that really leaves me no space. What you can do is replace these with those cards, and then replace either this or where is it? These. You're gonna replace these cards with the Grade 2 Self-Damager. But again, those cards aren't very useful when you are at very high damage, because they're just not. But these guys, they can still be useful, so a little heads up there. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this deck profile. Thanks for watching, guys. This is Karataku, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!